Good morning, everyone. This is ITLD 728, Technology Professional Training and Consulting. I'm Phil Truthaway, and in this course, we're going to be looking at the question, how can we design trainings efficiently? Specifically, this course aims to prepare students to implement technology-based training and consulting in a range of different scenarios. Now, you may be wondering what types of training we're going to be working with in this class or what types of scenarios are going to come up. But before we get into the details of that and how to analyze it, I wanted to start with the big tool we're going to be using in this class, which is the ADDIE model. Now, the ADDIE model is an instructional design process that helps people design learning, whether it is courses, training modules, or all sorts of things. So let's take a look. ADDIE is an acronym. It stands for Analysis, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And this is the ADDIE process. There's essentially 5 stages that we go through whenever we're designing learning content. And the first time you do the ADDIE process, you're going to be performing it linearly. Okay, we're going to do analysis first, then design, develop, and so on. Okay, in that linear fashion. But ADDIE is also a dynamic process, which means at any point we can go back to the beginning or go back to another stage as new information becomes available. Okay, so the ADDIE model, although it starts off in this nice linear fashion, it ends up a little more complicated once we start considering our ability to jump back a step. So the ADDIE process begins with the analysis stage, where essentially we are trying to gather information about the type of learning that needs to take place, the types of learners that we're going to be working with, and what they need to accomplish to be successful. Okay, so in the analysis stage, we're looking at things like considering the goal, the overall goal of our training or consulting. Right, this is at a generalized level. We're not getting specific yet with DOK levels and writing objectives, that sort of thing. We just want to know, what is the general goal of the training? What do we want to get better at? What do we want to work on? That sort of thing. And the instructional analysis portion, we're looking at, well, what does mastery look like in that area? If our goal is to improve at this type of math problem, what does that look like on paper? What are we going to see changes with in our learners once they achieve that mastery? We're going to consider our stakeholders, both the learners and our employers in the case of training and consulting. Right? What are my learners' current knowledge level? We have to know where our learner's starting at, so we know what they need to know. Specifically, we need to know what will they need to learn to achieve mastery. Okay, if we know where our learners are at, we know what marks mastery, we can then identify what they need to learn to achieve that mastery. We call this the knowledge gap, right? The gap of knowledge that we're aiming to teach with our training or consulting. And sometimes we're going to have specific needs from the employer or whoever has ordered this training to be performed. Okay, that type of thing needs to be considered and thought of in that analysis stage. And then finally, our resources analysis. Okay, we also want to consider things like what resources are available and what tools are available to help us kind of run this training, right? So that is the analysis stage. This is usually the first stage of the design process, but we can go back to this stage anytime when new information becomes available, because that might change everything going forward. Okay, so remember, this is a dynamic process. We don't have to do the analysis first every time. Sometimes we start with the analysis and come back to it as we learn more about our learners. After the analysis stage is the design phase in the ADDIE process. In the design phase, we're figuring out a general plan for our educational content. Specifically, we want to determine the structures of our trainings. We want to break our content into chunks. We want to determine an appropriate pacing based on our learner group and our learner needs. In the design phase, we'll also be writing learning objectives. Okay, here we want to be specific and choose measurable outcomes. Okay, we'll talk more on all of this throughout the course, but today's kind of the intro. In the design phase, we're also going to be organizing resources and creating an assessment plan. Okay, we'll have to determine what resources and assessments are already available or what need to be created in the next phase of the ADDIE process. Okay, a lot of times with trainings or consultings, there might be resources already available, or there might be quizzes or certification tests that are going to happen at the end of the training. So really, we just want to figure out what are we working with and what do we need to build around during this design phase. The third phase in the ADDIE process is the development phase. And this is where we are creating our instructional materials. Okay, we're developing our materials that we need to be used, things that don't already exist that we need to create. Right, this might be items like lesson plans, warm-up activities, presentation materials, note takers, practice assignments, or assessments. Right? Anything you need to actually teach the lesson that doesn't already exist, we want to create that in our development phase. Next, the I in ADDIE represents implementation. And in the implementation phase, we are piloting or running our course. Okay, we want to plan and execute the lesson. We'll have to find a suitable trainer. Sometimes you might not be the actual trainer of the training you're creating, and you might have to find someone else to pass that off to. Or it might be you that's teaching the lesson. That's fine as well. And we'll have to find our group of learners. And then we arrange a time and a place for the lesson, and we try it out, right? The implementation phase is about teaching the lesson and seeing how it goes, whether this is in a pilot group just as a test, or with the actual student group and learner group that you're going to be working with, just to see kind of how it's running, if it's running correctly, and what changes we need to make in this next phase of the ADDIE process. And that next phase is the evaluation phase. This is the final phase in the ADDIE process, where you're considering things like, how did our learners react to the lesson? Did they perform well on our assessments? Is the training changing the behavior of the learners, maybe in the workplace or wherever we're training them to see this behavior change, right? Can we observe it after the training? And finally, does that change behavior result in increased performance? Okay, whatever we're working towards improving in, hopefully our training is showing that increased performance. Okay, and in this evaluation phase of the ADDIE process, at any point, if you're receiving feedback that says this isn't working or this is working great, we can work back and tweak our training to be better, right? So this is kind of a recursive process. The fifth time you teach a training should not be the same as the first time. You should be getting better with every loop. You should be evaluating how the training is going, what worked, what didn't work, and making adjustments. Right? So that is the ADDIE process. Hopefully you guys have seen that before, but we're going to focus a lot on that process in this class. And that'll kind of be our home base. All right, now that is the ADDIE model. My guess is that you've probably seen that before in your ITLD program. If not, that's okay. But that'll be kind of the home base we're going to use in this course. That'll be our general design process when we're looking at designing trainings. And I've kind of split up the course content to reflect that. Okay, we're going to spend a few weeks on analysis, then design phase, development phase, and so on. Okay, so that should give you an idea of how this course is going to work. Now, as far as what I want you to learn specifically, kind of broken it down into learning objectives here. For the analysis phase, we're going to be doing a logic model project. Okay, you'll get more info on that a little later. But as a student, you should be able to propose an appropriate training or consulting model based on student and client needs. Okay, this is our goal for this project. And we're going to do that by describing student and client needs, defining possible limitations, identifying potential useful technologies for the training, and to hypothesize an optimal training model. Okay, so our first project, we're going to be looking at these ideas. Okay, you guys will get more on that next week, but that'll be our analysis phase project. We'll also be doing another project on the design phase where we're going to design a storyboard. Okay, as students, you should be able to construct a storyboard for a training course or activity. We're going to work on this by creating learning objectives, identifying potential instructional strategies, determining an appropriate pace and structure for our training activity, and creating a written outline of that activity. Okay, so that's what we'll be working on during the second portion of the class when we're learning about the design phase. In our third module, when we're talking development, we're going to develop some learning materials for a project. Okay, in this course, we're going to generate different types of instructional materials, including, we're going to take a look at all these different types of materials: written materials, multimedia materials, interactive materials, and hands-on materials. Okay, so we're going to spend a week looking at each of those, and that'll culminate in a project where you're going to design one of those types of instructional materials. And in our last project, what we're going to do is we're going to put it all together for the final presentation. Specifically, you guys are going to create and present a multimedia presentation on a training or consulting concept. We're going to apply the ADDIE model to plan the training, apply the ADDIE model to develop appropriate materials for the training. Then you're going to construct a multimedia presentation detailing the ADDIE process used. And finally, present the information in a clear and direct fashion. Okay. This will be the one time where we do meet as a class for these presentations. Okay, the rest of the course will be asynchronous, online, kind of at your own pace, but I will try to figure out some dates that work for most people so that we can do our final presentations as a class. Okay, so that this project will be the one time that we will meet as a class here. As far as grading goes for the class, we're going to have 10 knowledge checks. These are kind of weekly, smaller assignments that'll be done in the same week. Sometimes there'll be a discussion. Sometimes there'll be a little mini project, design a flyer or poster, that sort of thing. We have the logic model and storyboard are going to be worth 50 points because those are going to be shorter projects. And then our material development and our final presentation projects are going to be worth 100 points. Okay, so pretty simple there. We have 10 small assignments, 2 smaller projects, and 2 large projects for a total of 400 points. Here you can see our calendar. This is available online on the syllabus page. Okay, so click on syllabus anytime you want to see access to this calendar, and I'll update that if any changes come up. But you can see each week we'll have either a knowledge check due or a project due. Usually I think there might be one week with nothing due, but I like to have the due dates on the calendar so it's nice and clear when things are due. Okay, I'm not going to have them due at a specific time. As long as they are there the next day, I'm happy. So if you submitted 11:50 p.m., that's okay. If you submitted a little after that, that's okay. Just make sure the next morning, if I go to grade it on, let's say 9/3 for knowledge check 1, that it's completed. Okay. You can see here kind of how our topics go and how things break out. The first 3 weeks, we're focusing on that analysis phase, right? And then the next 3 weeks, design phase, and you can see that how that lines up with the projects there on the right. Okay, but these are our topics we're going to look at today. We're looking at the course intro and the ADDIE model. Next week, we'll look at some different types of training. Week 3, we're going to look at that pre-training needs analysis. Week 4, we're going to work on writing objectives. Then we're going to take a look at instructional strategies in week 5, pace and structure in week 6, and then we'll start developing materials. So week 7, we're looking at written materials, then multimedia materials in week 8, interactive materials, then hands-on materials for 9 and 10. And then we'll finish up the course with some tips for implementing our trainings as well as evaluating them. Things like communication strategies, creating backup plans, and adapting with technology. Okay, I think that's a big one. Always want to have a backup plan when you're performing trainings, especially with technology involved. We're going to talk about providing feedback, formative assessment and summative assessment, and some different technologies there and how we can implement that. And then the last week, we only have a few days, so we'll just do a little review. And I will let you guys know about those final presentations. I should send out a survey probably in the next few weeks to kind of gather info on that and when would be a good time for everyone. Okay, but this is our calendar. We have 16 weeks and then the finals week. Okay, so time's going to fly. There's no fall break. We do have some shorter weeks for things like Nevada Day and Thanksgiving. Okay, so I'll try not to have too much on those weeks. I don't want to overload you before the breaks, but we'll usually have something due about every week. Okay, so that's all the content I have for you this week. I really just wanted to introduce the course, show you guys the syllabus and kind of what to expect, and introduce/review that ADDIE model, since that's going to be kind of our central model we're going to use in this course to design our trainings. As far as the course goes, this is our homepage here that you guys have seen. Hopefully you guys have seen this already. If you've made it to the video, I'm sure you have. But just key things on that homepage. This will be an online asynchronous course. Okay, we will not have a weekly Zoom meeting. What I like to do is post an instructional video a week, post some extra reading materials and maybe some bonus materials if you really like a topic and want to extend your learning a little bit. And we'll see that down here in the content page. Okay, there is on our homepage a link to the syllabus/calendar. There's a Meet the Instructor page if you want to know a little more about me. And if we take a look at our week 1 page here, we can see what the expectations are for this week. Okay, and this is kind of the setup I like and that I'm going to try to use for this course. So each week we'll have an instructional video that you can watch. I'll have the slides available to download in case there's something in there that you like or want to save. There's going to be some reading resources that you can check out. You can either skim these or read them. I'm not going to tell you how to soak up the information, right? Do whatever works best for you. But the reading resources are going to be things that I'm suggesting that you should take a look at. And then there will also be some additional resources that I consider optional. Okay, so this week we have a reading resource on the ADDIE model here that you guys can check out that also has some pretty good videos for each of the stages. So check this out. Maybe just give it a quick skim if you feel pretty comfortable with the ADDIE model, or maybe watch all the videos if you're feeling pretty new to this concept. You can check out the syllabus, although we covered a lot of that information already, but there is a little more info there if you want to check it out. And as far as extending your learning this week, there are a couple models similar to the ADDIE model as far as kind of generalized instructional design models. So if you're curious, you can check out the Dick and Carey model, the Assure model, or rapid prototyping. And there's also just an additional resource for the ADDIE model here. Okay, so some different options there if you find this stuff interesting and want to go down the rabbit hole a little more. As far as assignments go, okay, each week I'm going to try to post a practice quiz so you can test your learning on the content of this week. Okay, this one has just 5 questions. And it's general things like in this phase of the ADDIE process, learning materials are created, and you would come down here and choose, right, which phase is that. So just a quick quiz on the video content. The practice quizzes are not graded, so you will see the answers when you're done. You can retake them if you want to try again, that sort of thing. And what is graded this week is our knowledge check. So let's take a look at our knowledge check 1. Okay, and for this assignment, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at some of these training and consulting jobs out there, right? Instead of just me telling you what you're going to need in the field, take a look, right? What field do you want to work in? Because not every training position is going to use the same technology or be training the same learners. So for our first knowledge check, I'd just like you to search for a job posting, okay? You can use whatever site you would like, but if you're not sure, I have some listed here. Maybe Indeed, USA Jobs, or Nevada Jobs, ZipRecruiter, things like that. And you're just looking for a training or consulting job, maybe instructional design, instructional systems specialist, instructional coach, positions like this. Okay, or if you have something in mind in a field that you would like to work for, that's totally okay. But I'd like you to go find a job posting, look through it, think about it, read kind of what that job is like, and then there are some questions here, and we're going to have a little discussion for our first knowledge check. Okay, so after you find your post, you're just going to come in here, create a reply and answer, and you can number these 1, 2, 3, 4 to keep it nice and simple. But I want to know, what training or consulting position did you find, and why did you choose this position to investigate? Right? Why does this position sound interesting to you? Number 2, I want to know, what types of learners do you anticipate training in a position like this? Are they going to be students? Are they going to be working professionals? Are they going to be college-aged, elementary-aged? Right? Try to figure out details about those learners so that you kind of know the population you're going to be working with. Number 3, this is a big one. What types of technology are listed as required or useful for this position? This is something I would recommend all students be aware of as you progress through your ITLD program. Right? You should know the type of technology that is expected of the position you want to have, and you should be practicing that technology. Okay, and in this class, we're going to have some different chances to practice different tech. So if you know what type of tech you need to learn, it could be great to use that for our practice projects. And I'm also curious what your comfort level is with these technologies currently. So this will help me kind of know how deep to dive in with these different technologies, or what maybe we should focus on if there's some clear trends in our job postings there. And finally, number 4, I'm like to just know, are there any other types of technologies you guys would like to investigate in this class? Right? Maybe you want to learn how to incorporate AI more. Like, that's totally okay. Let's look at how to do that correctly and ethically and efficiently in this class. But maybe that's something you'd like to write about, or articulate storyline, or one of the kind of traditional instructional design programs. But lots of options there. We can look at things like creating videos and how to post them to YouTube if that's something people need, although we do cover that a little bit in the multimedia course. Maybe some of you have taken that with me already. But really, I'm just trying to gather information about the types of technology you guys need to be successful, how comfortable you are with them, and what other technologies you'd like to investigate. Okay? So this is our first assignment. The way we'll do discussions when I post them, or any knowledge check where we're giving each other peer feedback. Okay, please be kind, first and foremost, obviously. Okay, everyone is very vulnerable online. It's hard to tell when people are joking or sarcastic, so just lead with kindness whenever we're talking online or sharing feedback. You will be answering these questions by Thursday. This gives everyone a chance to reply. So remember, try to have this post done by Thursday, 8/28. And that'll be the first 8 points is kind of your initial post. And then by replying to 2 of your peers, just citing something you learned or maybe found interesting. If you could do that by Monday, you'll get 2 more points there. Okay, so this is our first assignment, 10 points. You get 8 for the post and 2 for the replies. Okay, so that is mostly it this week. We do have Zoom office hours where I kind of just hang out in a Zoom call in case anyone has any questions on things. So feel free to pop into those if you'd like. There's the Zoom link, the ID and passcode. You can pop in at the start of the hour. You could pop in the last 10, 15 minutes. Whenever you have time available, just hop in there. If those Zoom hours don't work for you, that's totally okay as well. You can feel free to message me on Web Campus or email, and we can try to answer questions electronically. Or if you're really stumped, we can always do like an alternate meeting time that's different than the Zoom hours. Okay, so that is week 1. Welcome to the course. Hopefully that made sense, and please let me know if you guys get stuck or if you need help with anything. My email's at the top. Remember, the Zoom hour is Thursday and at the bottom. Good luck, and I hope you guys like the class.